Hello. Thank you for your continuous support, this means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. Now, let's dive into the details of today's story. Hi, I'm Sarah. Today going to read you the story of Leia, which is titled like this. My spoiled sister and her fiancé demanded my share of the inheritance for their fancy wedding. You'll still be an old maid. You don't need that money, they said. Our parents sided with her, so I gave them all a surprise that made them regret their demands. Well, let's go. I stared at the single candle flickering on my small cake, the soft glow barely reaching empty chairs around my kitchen table. My 27th birthday. Not exactly how I imagined spending it. But honestly, what did I expect? Make a wish, Leia. My friend Jen nudged me, her smile way too enthusiastic for the sad little gathering we'd thrown together at the last minute. I closed my eyes, blew out the candle, and tried to ignore the familiar sting of disappointment. Mom had called earlier that morning with her usual excuses. Leia, honey, we just can't make it tonight. Your sister's wedding plans are absolutely consuming us right now. The venue, the flowers, guest list, it's all so much work. You understand, right? Turning 27 isn't really a milestone birthday anyway. Sure, Mom. No problem. I'd replied automatically, the same way I always did when they chose Cassie over me. It had been that way for as long as I could remember. When we were kids, Cassie got private dance lessons while I got group classes at the community center because the budget only stretches so far. Leia, for her 16th birthday, Cassie received a car. For mine, a gift card to the mall. When Cassie graduated college, they threw her a massive party and gave her a trip to Europe. My graduation earned me a dinner at Olive Garden and a department store luggage set. The pattern was so predictable that it had long ago stopped surprising me. My parents had always made it clear, intentionally or not, that Cassie was the golden child and I was the afterthought. Earth to Leia. Jen waved her hand in front of my face. Want to open your presents now? I nodded, pushing thoughts of my family aside. At least I had good friends. Jen, Marcus, and Tori had shown up for me tonight with takeout, wine, and genuine affection. That was worth something. As I opened their thoughtful gifts, I found myself wishing Grandma Rose could have been there. She was the only one in my family who ever made me feel like I mattered just as much Cassie. Every birthday, she'd bring me a special gift and whisper, "Don't let them dim your light, my Leia." Last year's birthday was the first without her after she passed away from cancer, and I still felt her absence like a physical pain. After Grandma died, her will had surprised everyone. She left $170,000 each to Cassie and me, an equal split that clearly annoyed my parents, who probably expected Cassie to get more. I remember my sister's immediate reaction. Well, I'm using mine for a down payment on an apartment. Cassie had announced at the reading of will, her fiancé Josh, nodding approvingly beside her. It's the responsible thing to do. The implication was clear. Whatever I did with my inheritance would obviously be less responsible. But I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I put the entire sum into an investment account. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it yet, but knew I wanted Grandma's gift to grow. It felt like she was still looking out for me somehow. More wine, Tori offered, pulling me back to the present. God, yes. I laughed, extending my glass. So, what's new with everyone else? The night shifted away from my birthday and into comfortable conversation about work, dating disasters, and plans for the summer. For a few hours, I forgot about being the forgotten daughter and just enjoyed being with people who actually wanted to be around me. After they left, I cleaned up the few dishes and checked my phone. No missed calls from my parents. No belated birthday wishes from Cassie, just a text from Mom asking if I would help stuff wedding invitations next weekend. A week after my birthday, my phone rang while I was making dinner. Seeing my mom's number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Leia. We'd love to have you over for dinner tomorrow night. Can you make it? Mom's voice was unusually sweet, which immediately made me suspicious. "What's the occasion?" I asked, stirring the pasta sauce I'd been making. "Does there need to be an occasion for family dinner?" "We just want to see you." My first thought was that they wanted to apologize for missing my birthday. Maybe they'd realized how hurtful it was and wanted to make amends. It seemed unlikely given our history, but people can change, right? "Sure. I'll be there 6 o'clock. "Perfect. See you then, honey." I hung up, feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe turning 27 would be the year things changed with my family. Maybe they'd finally see me as an equal to Cassie. God, I was naive. When arrived at my parents' suburban home the next evening, Cassie's car was already in the driveway along with Josh's sleek Mercedes. I smoothed down my dress, nothing fancy, but I'd made an effort and rang the doorbell. "Leia." Mom opened the door with a bright smile. "Come in. Come in. Everyone's already here." The dining room table was set with the good china. The kind usually reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Dad was pouring wine, Josh was checking something on his phone, and Cassie was adjusting the flowers in centerpiece. They all looked up when I entered. "Hey, sis," Cassie said, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "Nice of you to join us." Not one word about missing my birthday. Not even a belated happy birthday, just plastered on smiles and an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't quite place. We sat down to eat, making painfully polite small talk about the weather and Dad's golf game. I kept waiting for someone to bring up my birthday, offer an explanation or apology, but it never came. Finally, as Mom served dessert, she cleared her throat and exchanged glances with Dad and Cassie. "Leia, we wanted to have you over because we need to have a serious family discussion." I put down my fork, suddenly understanding that this dinner had nothing to do with making amends. "What kind of discussion?" I asked, though a sinking feeling in my stomach told me I wasn't going to like whatever came next. Mom looked at Cassie, who straightened in her chair and cleared throat. "Well," my sister began with a self-important tilt of her chin. "As you know, Josh and I have been planning our wedding. We've calculated all the expenses for the wedding," Cassie continued, her voice taking on that superior tone I knew so well. "With 150 guests and booking the Grand Plaza downtown, it's going to cost much more than we initially thought." I nodded slowly, not understanding what this had to do with me. Mom and Dad watched me with strange expectation in their eyes. "We've all talked it over," Cassie said, gesturing to include our parents and Josh. "And we think you should contribute your inheritance from Grandma to help pay for the wedding." I stared at them, waiting for someone to crack a smile or burst into laughter. This had to be a joke, right? But their faces remained serious, expectant even. They genuinely believed I should hand over my $170,000 inheritance for Cassie's wedding. "You're not serious?" I finally managed to say, "We're completely serious." Mom jumped in. "Family supports family. Leia, your sister needs this." I looked at each of them in disbelief. "And what about Cassie's inheritance?" "She got the same amount from Grandma." "That's for our apartment," Josh replied as if I was being purposely dense. "We've already started looking at properties." The audacity stunned me. They expected me to fund Cassie's extravagant wedding while she kept her inheritance for an apartment. Suddenly, years of being the afterthought, the less important daughter, crystallized into perfect clarity. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not giving you my inheritance." Cassie's face contorted in anger. "What do you even need it for? It's not like you're getting married anytime soon or ever. You're not even dating anyone. You're going to end up an old maid while that money just sits there." The venom in her voice shocked me. I looked to my parents, expecting them to step in and tell Cassie that her attack was uncalled for. Instead, Dad nodded along. "Your sister has a point, Leia. Cassie has Josh and their future to think about. What are your plans? You're just hoarding that money." Mom reached across the table as if to soften the blow. "Honey, we just think Cassie needs the money more than you do right now." You've always been so independent. Independent. Their code word for less important. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'm not giving you my money. Grandma left it to me. Not to Cassie's wedding fund. Don't be selfish. Mom snapped, dropping the gentle facade. Selfish. I'm selfish for keeping my own inheritance. Cassie got the exact same amount from Grandma. She can use her money for the wedding if it's so important. Before they could respond, I walked out, ignoring their calls to come back and be reasonable. I drove home in a fog of anger and hurt, barely registering the trip. My phone started buzzing almost immediately, but I ignored it. When I got back to my apartment, I finally looked at my phone. 5 missed calls from Mom, 3 Cassie, and several texts telling me how disappointed they were in me, how selfish I was being, how tearing the family apart. I turned off my phone and poured myself a large glass of wine. Part of me wanted to cry, but mostly I just felt numb. The next morning, I turned my phone back onto a barrage of new messages. My parents had apparently spent the evening calling my aunts and uncles because now I had messages from them, too. All expressing their disappointment in Mike's selfish behavior. Aunt Linda's message was typical. Your mother told me what happened. I can't believe you're being so stubborn about this. Your sister's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You should be honored to help make it special. I didn't bother responding to any of them. What was there to say? That I was used to being the family's afterthought? That I was tired of sacrificing for Cassie? At work that Monday, I tried to focus on my marketing projects, but my mind kept drifting back to the family dinner. I couldn't believe they had orchestrated the entire evening just to demand my inheritance. And worse, they genuinely seemed to think I was in the wrong for refusing. By Wednesday, the messages had slowed but taken on a more threatening tone. You're going to regret pushing your family away, Dad texted. Blood is thicker than water, Leia. I blocked their numbers that night, needing some peace, but the respite was short-lived. On Friday evening, I turned the corner to my apartment building and stopped dead in my tracks. Mom, Cassie, and Josh were standing by the entrance, clearly waiting for me. I considered turning around, but they'd already spotted me. We need to talk, Mom called out as I approached reluctantly. There's nothing to talk about, I replied, keeping my distance on the sidewalk. I'm not inviting you up. Cassie stepped forward, her eyes puffy as if she'd been crying. You're tearing this family apart. Do you realize what you're doing? The whole family is upset with you. I didn't ask the whole family to get involved in my personal finances. I pointed out you did that. Mom shook her head sadly. We just don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. It's your sister's wedding. Let me make this perfectly clear, I said. My voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Grandma left Cassie and me the same amount of money. If her wedding is so important, she can use her inheritance to pay for it. Cassie threw her hands up dramatically. Are you kidding me? We've already picked out our apartment. Josh and I have plans for that money. And have plans for my money, I replied simply. Josh stepped forward, his lawyer persona taking over. Leia, be reasonable. No one is asking you to give up your future. But right now, Cassie's wedding is the priority for family. I looked at the 3 of them, my mom wringing her hands, Cassie with indignant expression, and Josh with his condescending smile, and suddenly felt very calm. My answer is no. Please leave me alone. I walked past them to the building entrance, swiping my key card with shaking hands. As the door closed behind me, I heard Cassie's angry voice. This isn't over, Leia. I thought the confrontation at my apartment would be the worst of it. I was wrong. The following Monday, I logged on to Facebook to find my notifications exploding. Mom and Cassie had both posted lengthy, emotionally manipulative messages about family loyalty and sacrifice without naming me directly, but making it painfully obvious who they were talking about. Mom's post read, "It breaks my heart when someone you've sacrificed everything for turns their back on family." As parents, we give and give only to have our love thrown back in our faces. Cassie's was even more dramatic. When your own sister betrays you right before the most important day of your life, you realize who truly loves you and who doesn't. So grateful for everyone supporting us during this difficult time. The comments section under both posts was filled with relatives and family friends offering sympathy and condemnation of my apparent selfishness. Aunt Linda had written, "Some people just don't understand the meaning of family. So sorry you're going through this." Uncle Bob added, "That's shocking behavior. She should be ashamed." Not a single person asked for my side of the story. I decided not to respond. Engaging would only escalate things. And frankly, I wasn't surprised by how quickly everyone took Cassie's side. It had been that way my entire life. My cousins had always received hand-me-downs from Cassie, but never me. At family gatherings, everyone fawned over Cassie's accomplishments, while mine were footnotes in the conversation. But the online campaign was just the beginning. 3 days later, my boss called me into his office, expression unusually serious. "Leia, please close the door and have a seat," he said. I sat down, my mind racing through possible work issues that might have come up. Had I missed a deadline? Made an error on the Henderson account? I received a concerning phone call yesterday, he continued, looking uncomfortable. From your parents, they said some troubling things. That you're untrustworthy, that you betrayed your family, and that you couldn't be trusted with company responsibilities either. The blood drained from my face. They had actually called my workplace to try damage my career. It was a level of vindictiveness I hadn't thought them capable of. "I don't normally get involved in employees' personal lives," my boss said, but this was concerning enough that I felt needed to address it. I explained the whole situation, Grandma's equal bequests, my sister's demand for my money while keeping hers for an apartment, my refusal, and the escalating harassment. When I finished, he shook his head. "Jesus, Leia, that's intense. Don't worry about your job." I had a hunch there was more to the story. "I just wanted to give you a heads up about what they're doing." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. "I appreciate you telling me." "Take care of yourself," he said as I stood to leave. "And let me know if there's anything you need." I nodded gratefully and returned to my desk. As I sat down, phone buzzed with a text from number I didn't recognize. "You're a selfish bastard who doesn't deserve a family." I blocked the number immediately, but another text came through from a different unknown number. "Everyone knows what you did. How can live with yourself?" The harassment continued for days. New phone numbers, anonymous emails, messages from distant relatives I barely knew. It seemed my parents and Cassie were determined to make my life unbearable until I gave in. One night, after blocking 3 new numbers that had sent abusive messages, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling the walls closing in. I'd always been the family outcast, but this coordinated attack was something else entirely. They were trying to break me down, isolate until I had no choice but to surrender. That's when I remembered the messages Cassie had sent me a few months ago. Messages I'd saved because something in me knew they might matter someday. I scrolled back through our text history to January. There they were. Cassie asking to use my apartment for secret meetings with her ex-boyfriend, Michael. This was while she already engaged to Josh. "Need to use your place tomorrow afternoon. Michael's in town and we need somewhere private. Don't tell anyone." And later, "Thanks for letting us use your apartment. Still have feelings for him, but not breaking up with Josh. Michael's just fun." There were more messages like that spanning several weeks. Cassie had been cheating on Josh while wearing the engagement ring he'd given her, using my apartment as her secret meeting place. I'd also saved the photos she'd sent me during the Christmas holidays, selfies of her and Michael cuddled up together on his couch. She was wearing the designer dress Josh had given her as an early Christmas gift, which made the betrayal even more twisted. She'd sent them to brag about having multiple men interested in her, a habit she'd had since high school. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over the screenshots. Using these would be nuclear. It would devastate Cassie and potentially end her engagement. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned to protect my sister at all costs, hesitated. But then another text came through. Your parents told everyone what a horrible daughter you are. No one is on your side. Something inside me snapped. They had called my boss. Were harassing me day and night. They were turning everyone I knew against me. All because I refused to hand over money that was rightfully mine. Without giving myself time to reconsider, I selected the screenshots of Cassie's messages and the photos of her with Michael. I found Josh's number in my contacts and hit send. For good measure, I added a short message. Josh, I thought you should know what Cassie's been hiding from you. I'm sorry to be the one tell you this. As soon as I sent it, a wave of conflicting emotions hit me. Relief that I'd finally stood up for myself. Guilt over potentially destroying my sister's relationship. Anxiety about what would happen next, but mostly a strange sense of calm. The truth was out. Whatever happened now, at least it wouldn't be built on lies. Morning came too quickly. I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating violently on my nightstand. Cassie's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. How could you? She screamed, her voice raw with fury. How the hell could you, Leia? I hadn't expected the conversation with Cassie to be civil, but the pure rage in her voice still caught me off guard. You betrayed me, she continued, barely pausing for breath. Josh broke off the engagement. He can-led everything. The venue, the flowers, everything we planned. For once, I didn't immediately apologize or try to smooth things over. You betrayed him first, Cassie. You cheated on him and used my apartment to do it. That was different. It didn't mean anything. Her voice cracked with desperation. He was never supposed to find out. The absurdity of her logic was almost laughable. In Cassie's world, it wasn't the cheating that was wrong. It was being caught. You've ruined my life, she sobbed. Are you happy now? I thought about that question for a moment. Was I happy? No, but I wasn't sorry either. You tried to ruin my life first, I said quietly. You and Dad. Called my boss. You turned the family against me. All because I wouldn't give you my inheritance to fund your wedding while you kept yours for an apartment. That's not the same thing, she screamed. It is to me. I replied and ended the call. Knew it wasn't over. And sure enough, my parents called next. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to my father's threatening message. What you've done is unforgivable. You fix this, Leia. Call Josh and tell him you made it all up. You get him back for your sister or you're no daughter of ours. More messages followed. Mom alternated between guilt trips and anger. Cassie sent paragraphs of abuse. I stopped reading them after a while. Days passed, then weeks. I heard through a cousin that Josh had refused to reconcile with Cassie despite my family's best efforts. Apparently, he'd confronted her with the evidence, and she'd admitted everything, thinking he would forgive her. He didn't. The wedding was officially cancelled. Deposits were lost. The dream venue released their date. The expensive dress hung unworn in Cassie's closet, and somehow all of it was my fault, at least according to my family. I focused on work, spent time with my real friends, and tried to move forward. I still checked my investment account occasionally, watching Grandma's gift to me grow steadily. I decided to use part of it for a down payment on my own place, not because Cassie had planned to do that, but because it felt right for me. 3 months after the engagement ended, I received a formal-looking letter in the mail. Inside was a notarized statement signed by my parents. We, Richard and Diane Miller, hereby declare that we no longer recognize Leia Miller as our daughter. She has willfully damaged our family beyond repair and chosen to remove herself from our lives. We consider all familial obligations and ties severed from this day forward. I read it twice, then set down on my kitchen counter. The finality of it should have devastated me. Instead, I felt an unexpected lightness. They had given me what they thought was the ultimate punishment, but it felt like freedom. Over the next few months, I found an apartment I loved and used some of my inheritance for the down payment. I started dating again, joining a hiking club where I met interesting people who knew nothing about my family drama. I even began therapy to work through the years of being the less favored child. Sometimes I wondered about Cassie. Had she found another fiancé? Was she still living with our parents? Did she ever reflect on what had happened between us? But I didn't reach out, and neither did she. I kept Grandma Rose's photo on my nightstand. Sometimes I imagined her watching over me, approving of how I'd finally stood up for myself. "Don't let them dim your light," she used to say. For years, I'd let them do exactly that. Not anymore. 1 year after being downed, I received a small package in the mail with no return address. Inside was Grandma's silver locket, the one she always wore, Mom had kept after the funeral. There was no note, but I knew who had sent it. Mom's final acknowledgement. Perhaps that Grandma would have been on my side. I fastened the locket around my neck and looked at myself in the mirror. The girl who had always apologized for taking up space was gone. The woman who stared back at me now stood tall, unapologetic, free from the burden of seeking approval I would never receive. The inheritance money had been the catalyst. But real gift from Grandma had been the push to finally break free from a family that had never truly valued me. Some might call what happened a tragedy, losing my parents and sister forever. But I had lost them long ago, or perhaps never really had them to begin with. I touched the locket gently and whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." Outside my window, spring was coming, new beginnings. My light was finally shining, just as Grandma had always wanted, and no one would ever dim it again.